Have you ever looked in the mirror and noticed your muscles are starting to fade after the age of 40? Well, we might have the answer for that. Hey, I'm Mike,
And I'm Twain.
and welcome to another episode of 40 Plus Fit, the podcast where we unpack the science of sustainable weight loss and fitness for those over 40. Today, joining me is our head coach, Twain. With his expertise in fitness and training, he'll provide us with actionable tips and insights to help us maintain our strength and vitality.
Yeah, that's always the goal, right? It's strength and vitality. What exactly does vitality mean?
Vitality?
Yeah.
Vitality is more like when you talk about how do we say the gumption, you know,
Let's see. What is the
the
definition of
state of being full of life, energy, and enthusiasm. It's a sense of
living life
vigor,
with
exuberance, and zest for life.
living life with vigor, right? So
There, see, gumption,
that's
but they use the word spunk.
spunk.
Yeah.
That's kind of the goal, isn't it? Like no matter how old we get, you want to be able to still feel like you can do everything and anything.
Well, to be fair, we do. Speaking
Hmm.
as somebody who is over 40, my body might be 40, but my mind still says I'm 20. So whenever we do any kind of art, like sport or whatever it is, it's a
Yeah.
case of like, okay, I know I should be able to do this at this time, like run the 100 meters in under 11 seconds, run the
Mm.
5K. Like I was just chatting to you the other day and I was saying run the 5 kilometer under 20 minutes. Now it's like you go over 20 minutes. It's like, what the heck, man? Why am I so slow? This is a failure. It's the mind hasn't caught up to the body yet.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, I mean, like if we talk about it from the perspective of the physical, to be honest, I think nowadays, especially with a lot of people being able to keep up and put a little bit more time into prioritizing their health and their body, we're able to kind of close that gap, right? Where the mind is young, but the body is old.
Hmm.
The what's the phrase? The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Yeah.
And then, closing that gap a lot more. And to be honest, I think nowadays, especially like because I do bodybuilding, right? So a lot of the current or like really seasoned champions, many of them are in their late 40s. And there's like some guys in their 50s, still going strong, still, competing at such a high level as well. And that to be honest, that excites me a lot. Just thinking about like, wow, how much more, room there is to grow, how much more room there is to develop further.
So that's
Yeah.
a very interesting segue into today's topic, right? Because you're talking about the champions are here 40 plus, but here we are starting it out saying, oh, your muscles are fading after the age of 40. So maybe that's something we need to discuss here and define, shall we say, is
Yeah.
like when we talk about muscle mass fading, what are we talking about? Maybe you can just give us some insight there.
No, I think essentially that just means that there is a loss in the lean muscle tissue of the body. So when we talk about muscle, there's actually various types of muscles in the body, right? Like they have the organ muscles, smooth muscles, all this kind of stuff. Those are not the things that we are really talking about or referencing here when we talk about muscle mass that we can really change. And that's going to be the skeletal muscle mass, the actual the biceps when you flex your arm, the pecs that you flex and bounce and the all the good stuff that literally helps you move around the skeletal muscle. And so as we age, what happens is if we don't try to keep maintaining and retaining as much of this muscle, then it's going to naturally atrophy. And atrophy is just a very fancy way of saying it's going to get smaller. And again, with enough disuse, if you don't use it enough, it actually literally get like broken down and removed. Okay. The perspective here is honestly just that your body always wants to be as efficient as possible. Your body's actually quite lazy in that sense, but it's an evolutionary mechanism, right? It's trying to conserve energy all the time so that you always have the minimum cost to survive as much as possible. And so as we age, if we don't keep up with the maintenance of the muscle, then your body's going to be like, this thing is way too expensive for me to maintain and to keep up. So let's close this department. So, right. So we downsize it, we make it smaller. And that's essentially what it is. That's why muscle mass declines with age automatically. Because as we age, I think we talked about this in previous episodes before, the aging process is simply when uh, in a very simple way, it's simply when our body cannot renew the cells and renew itself and repair itself at a rate that matches with our body's breakdown. So our body's always constantly breaking down because we're moving around, we are staying alive, we're doing things, right? And we're stressing it out. And so the thing's breaking down and the body's always trying to repair itself. And when these two things, they match each other, yeah, then we generally stay in the same state. But if we cannot keep up with the rate of repair, then that's kind of where we start to age or show the age, right? And it starts to decline. So that's essentially the gist of it. Basically we're just getting weaker and, you know, um, not as full of vigor and spunk as we were when we age, if we don't do something about it.
Right. So it's fair to say that your body actually adapts to your lifestyle.
Yes.
All right. So with us generally being at executive levels, we usually are either in the office, sitting at desks, or sitting at meetings, or all these kind of pretty much living a sedentary kind of lifestyle. So the
Yeah.
body then would break down in the muscles or atrophy, as you give the fancy names,
Mhm.
and then adapt to the new lifestyle that we are actually doing. So if you don't need so much muscle mass, the body's going to say is okay. Uh, let's lean you out so that you don't need to consume so much.
Yeah, let's shed this expensive cost centers,
All right,
use
but
more appropriate business terms.
there is the downside to that, right?
Oh,
Because
100%.
yes, okay, you might now need to consume less calories and all that kind of stuff to sustain your your body. But as you age, you also become more frail in the ways that like maybe your balance is not as good, maybe you don't recover from a fall as good, all these kind
Yeah.
of things. Your actually quality of life goes down with the amount of muscle mass that you've lost. Would that be fair?
Yes. Yes, 100%. And this is really good to bring up because a lot of it's actually gaining a lot more traction nowadays where doctors are trying to emphasize to patients, especially the elderly, because we have like kind of like a really aging population. I mean, in Singapore, I know not many kids are, sorry, not many, I won't say kids, but not many of my generation are potentially like having kids. And then the generation or the couple of like cohorts after me, they're also not having as many kids, our population rates are kind of declining. And I think
Yep.
across the world, it seems to be a common trend where it just gets so much more. I mean, you can talk about the economics of it and things like that, where people feel it's more expensive to have a kid. But the fact is people are not having as many kids, right? So it's all aging population. And it seems like the what we're seeing a lot now is that all the old folks that did not take care of themselves, that allowed age to catch up in the sense of they didn't maintain their muscle, they got more frail, they got weaker. A lot of them seem to suffer that uh, grave issue where, just one fall, breaking a hip, breaking a shoulder, immobilizes them, and to the point where suddenly their life quality just drops dramatically after that. Because there's no resiliency in the body, and the body cannot resist, some of these simple accidents and incidents. Yeah, so it's catching on right now where a lot of doctors, a lot of medical professionals are actually recommending a lot of people to say, hey, in a way, start insuring your body right now with getting some proper training in, stimulate more muscle, try to build some muscle. And when people say build muscle, and especially when doctors and all these are prescribing this, it's not even in the sense of like, hey, be a bodybuilder and build as much muscle as you can, because that's obviously a very dedicated effort. But even just basic lifting and doing enough to maintain a certain quality of muscle, even build a certain slight, buffer of muscle around your body, so that as you age, this gives you a lot more of that buffer room where not only can you maintain your energy, maintain your movement, maintain your strength, but also if you were to have accidents, you are more likely to survive.
Mm. I think I read an article where they actually said that the person that was talking about this particular thing was saying that through the studies that they've done over the years, one of the predictors that they have for longevity of life is actually the amount of muscle mass that the person carries. Now, again, as you say, it doesn't mean you need to go be the next Ronnie Coleman or Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's not that kind of muscle mass they're talking about. But what they're
If
talking
only
about
it was
is
easy.
having the adequate amount of muscle mass, not
Mm.
substandard.
Yep. Yep.
So these are things I would say I've only learned in the past 3 to 5 years. I was not aware of this at all growing up. Growing up, it's like, okay, we go to the gym, we exercise everything because, ego. I want to
Yeah.
be bigger than my friend, or I want to be
Yes.
stronger than my friend. These
I
kind
mean,
of
we
things.
we got set on that path, right?
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah.
But I never actually knew how this all correlated into the older age.
Yes.
But I think a great example of it actually is Arnold Schwarzenegger. You
Mm.
see the guy is like what, about 72 now or something?
No idea, man. He's easily 70s already, probably getting into the 80s,
But
in
his
the next.
mobility is still very good. Like he's still able to go and do all kinds of action shots and everything.
Yeah. And,
Um,
and and look, like he's always regularly posting on his Instagram, or I mean media coverage is always showing him working out still even at his age, right?
mm,
In fact, I do remember there was one, he had some sort of a meet and greet, or he was being received at the airport or something, huge fans, whatever. Everybody's around there. And some dude tried to drop kick him. I
yes.
remember
It
seeing
was in
this.
South
Do you remember
Africa.
that? Okay?
Yeah.
Was that in South Africa?
Yeah.
Some dude went up, tried to drop kick him. He barely budged. It was
Yeah.
like hitting a wall. Like just think about it. A dude that's maybe at the time it was like late 60s, right? But look, like a dude that's late 60s is still able to be that strong. Like somebody can try to kick you with their full body weight, a drop kick, and they're not successful. He literally like it's as though somebody shoved him in the shoulder or
Yeah.
something.
Somebody just gave him
I
a
remember
push.
that clip and I was blown away when I watched that, when I saw that, it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I saw because the guy was trying to do like a karate fly kick kind of thing where he came running and was
Yeah,
like, oh, it's like I'm gonna take you down. And
yeah,
I think
proper
he came off
full
second best.
force. But it's good that you mentioned like, the past 3 to 5 years, because honestly, even for myself, I would say even I've been training people for like what, 15 years at this point. But only within the past 3 to 5 years have we really started to appreciate like, oh, cool, beyond just how cool being muscular looks, that there are all these health benefits that it really helps to protect, like for general population. So previously, when we always sold our fitness services and stuff, we always talk about, the confidence issues, talk about all those kind of stuff where, oh, you get a six. A lean out, fit into your clothes. I mean, we still do talk about that, and
Yeah.
people are concerned with that, yes. But now more than ever, especially for the older population, we emphasize that protecting like your life quality. And then that sits a lot better with so many people. Like I know why I go to the gym. It's not just to like because I'm vain or what, but it's because I literally want to protect my quality of life.
Mm. So that's all great. Let's move on to some practical things.
Yeah, sure.
If we start talking about, strategies for building and maintaining muscle mass, is it only resistance training that's going to give us this, or do we have other options? Or
Unfortunately, it is really just resistance training, in some form or another. And when I say resistance training, the reason why we say resistance training in the first place and not like weightlifting and all is because resistance training simply means that you have to, uh, you have to stimulate the muscles with a resistance to them that is sizable enough so that they will respond, and they will have a signal to the brain to say, hey, these muscles are exposed to this kind of resistance levels and they need to stay. I can't get rid of them, right? If I want to survive, I need to keep them around. And so resistance training can be anything from like lifting weights, which is really easy and efficient to do, body weight exercises if your starting level is not very, very high, you're very sedentary. Let's say you can't do a push-up, can't do a pull-up. Hey, those are great options as well. But it just needs to make sure that for where you're at, you have to challenge your muscles.
okay, would swimming fall under that as well?
Well, yeah. So that's where it will start to be a bit of a I would say a bit of a stretch. Like for most people, swimming itself will not really build very much muscle unless you're doing like Olympic level volumes of training. Because because again, there are three general factors you look at when you're talking about like developing training, right? You look at the amount of volume that means like how much work are you actually doing? You look at the intensity of it, which is basically what is the level of resistance that you're doing. You know, if you're lifting a weight for one maximum rep, that's like 100% intensity. If you're taking 50% of that weight, that's like 50% intensity. So that's like what intensity is. How heavy is the thing?
Mm.
And then there's also the frequency, which is how often are you doing the thing, right? So these three factors, they kind of coexist within like a little triangle, if that makes sense. And you can say, okay, I you can only select two. Okay, if you try to do all three at one shot, you could do it for a short period of time, and we do that in, when we plan training sometimes, but you won't be able to last very long. You burn out and, just beat the body into submission. So so you want to pick two of these things, and swimming would then fall under something where the resistance is not a very, very high resistance. Because again, you're swimming in water, but the water resistance is not a very, very high level of intensity. So you're not selecting intensity, but so in that sense, if you want to really gain a lot from it, you have to um do a lot of volume and a lot of frequency of it. So that's like how much more you need to do if you want it to at least have some commensurate comparison to, let's say, doing weights. But obviously, if you don't have the time, if you're somebody that's like, again, really busy, you probably won't have the time. So doing weights is going to be a lot more time efficient for that purpose of building muscle.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is we're looking at efficiency as well. So you could look at doing swimming, but
You
swimming
could,
you're probably going to have to swim 2 hours a day to get the same effect of two workouts per week, two half-an-hour workouts per week in the gym. Is that what you're
maybe, yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say that's fair enough a statement to make. And then also like you would have to slowly increase the amount of swimming that you do. That means like from 2 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, to continuously get more and more return on it. When with weights, you could simply just say, okay, I'll bring up the weight to make it heavier, you know?
Okay, so instead of looking at swimming as the resistance training, maybe you can look at swimming as a cardio supplementary your resistance
Yep.
training.
Yep. But because we are focused a lot on maintaining skeletal muscle mass, like
Yeah.
this, the whole point of this episode, yeah, so swimming won't
Okay.
really fall under that category.
All right. So then if we now say, okay, the best option that we're looking at right now is probably body weight exercises or looking at weightlifting. What
Yep.
is the frequency that somebody should actually be doing this at? Because you mentioned their frequency. So to
Uh,
really ensure that you're getting optimized out of this, what's the frequency that a person should be focusing on to maintain muscle mass?
So for this, I would say that the general recommendation would be something like 3 times a week. So that's the blanket recommendation for if I didn't know anything about a person, that's what I would say. 3 times a week, at least do 30 minutes. Make sure you're lifting some heavy weights within 30 minutes, really pushing yourself, and you're probably good. Okay, that's really the blanket. Now we can subdivide that into a little bit more of a filter and a categorization. One where the individual is somebody that has a decent fitness level. Okay, and then maybe the other one is where the person is like completely like a beginner. So if you're a complete beginner, you could probably get away in terms of frequency with even lesser than that. You can get away with like 2 sessions in a week where you are just training really hard and you can probably make some good progress already. Yeah, if you are somebody that's already a bit more advanced, you did a lot of athletics, a lot of sports, things like that before, probably you might need to go from 3 and maybe even do 4 times in terms of frequency, just because your body would adapt and change much faster.
Okay. And these kind of workouts, like what are you expecting in one of these workouts?
Oh, just standard, straightforward, like heavy weights. You're doing and what we talk about when we say heavy weights, it's an exercises selection is to make sure that you are choosing moves that will cover all your basic movements, which is some sort of squat, some sort of pressing, some sort of pulling motions, and some sort of weightlifting motions as well. Yeah. So as long as you're covering all these exercises over, those 3 sessions, you're probably doing the basic minimum already.
Okay. So you know in some of these gyms that we have, they have the circuit training where they have all the different machines in a
Yep.
circle basically. Then you just start at one point and work your way around.
Yep.
For many people, would that actually suffice, or do you recommend? more?
Honestly, from my experience, gyms like this where they have these kind of setups, what they usually do is they will put all the machines that like one machine for almost each body part, right?
Mm.
And so I would say actually that would be adequate for a lot of people. Like you could go there and especially as a beginner, you could go there, you could just do that. You make your way around the machines, and maybe do 3 rounds of 3 rounds on the machines and really really push yourself hard at each machine. Now, is that the best program that you could do? Yeah, probably not. There's probably better ways to organize the program. But for somebody that just wants like, I just want to make sure I do the bare minimum dose of taking care of my body and making sure that it takes the least amount of time, that's probably a good option. So you're not looking to like maximize muscle growth or anything. You're just looking to like make sure, hey, whatever muscle I currently have, I'm definitely going to keep it. And I'm also going to make sure that I maintain my strength and I maintain my current level of vigor. I mean, you might probably even see some level, like, some improvement in that sense as well, just because you're going from like not training to training, right? So I would say that's actually a really viable option for the most part, because if those gyms are set up that way, they likely already have planned it out such that you're covering every single part of the body. So, there are no gaps there in that sense. But
Okay.
obviously, if you want like more specific technical results, then you would need to start putting a bit more effort into planning out the training and, you know, going more advanced than that.
All right.
Yeah.
Uh, what about, because I saw this post, right? Where this
Yeah.
person was saying that if you're getting older, you should not be doing HIIT workouts anymore. You should consider doing Pilates, right? I mean,
Oh,
the
yeah.
post itself was talking about something else, but when we bring it under this here,
Yeah.
how does Pilates fare in the maintaining of muscle mass?
Oh, that's actually an interesting one. I'm not too sure about the science behind it in that sense, because I don't think anyone really does any specific studies on Pilates versus weight training as a modality for muscle maintenance. But for what we know about muscle maintenance, it's probably just a complementary thing, and you probably would still want to make sure you're doing some sort of weights. Okay, and the reason why I say that is this, because when you do Pilates, while it can be very challenging and you can get a lot of the burn in the muscles, you can do very high reps and stuff. The weights that you use ultimately are just more or less your body weight. If you do reformer Pilates, maybe it's like body weight plus a bit of bands, things like this, which is some sizable amount of resistance. But as you get more adapted to it, you probably would want to have some better way to like overload the body, just to make sure that you are at the very least, keeping your strength at a high level, because ultimately that strength base is what's going to keep your quality of life higher. Um, but that being said, if you are somebody that's already got a decent amount of muscle and all, it doesn't take a lot. From the literature, we know it doesn't take a lot to maintain that muscle, or at least like maybe 80-90% of that muscle. So if you already are fairly muscled up and you think like, hey, even with like 10-20% lesser in this, I would still be able to lead a very good high quality life, probably doing something like Pilates might be good enough to maintain where you're at. And if you keep really active, you probably won't lose very much muscle. Everything else will just be dictated by your nutrition. So if you are maybe eating lesser and lesser, then yeah, your body might shed off a bit of the pounds. Maybe you'll lose some of the muscle in some of the cases because you're not actively training it, but it might not necessarily translate into like a very terrible quality of life. Because again, you're keeping active, you're doing some sort of resistance training, like Pilates would probably be considered some degree of resistance training, but just towards the lighter end of the spectrum in terms of intensity, but maybe not in terms of volume. So you can see I'm putting a lot of qualifiers here because it's not so cut and dry in that sense. Yeah, but yeah, but it's one of those things where I feel you number one, Pilates serves that function of teaching you how to be very aware of your body. So kinesthetic awareness, developing core control. A lot of people say core strength and stuff, but it really is just like you know how to like stay in positions and endure those positions for longer. You know how to control your core a bit better. And then those are very, very important things because let's say if you get older and you fall down, that will help with resiliency as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
You,
Oh,
oh,
but I just thought of one thing as well that Pilates doesn't do that weight training can do, and that's bone density and some of the structural integrity components of things. So like Pilates would not be able to train your bone density up or push your bone density up, which is actually vital because again, especially for women, right? Osteoporosis is a
yep.
very very real uh condition that a lot of ladies face, especially after 35. The bones start to get more porous. So when you do more weights, it actually creates and maintains the density of the bones. And at old age, breaking your bones, falling down, breaking your bones, that's the worst thing that can happen, aside from getting some other conditions, right? But that's probably one of the worst things, preventable things that can happen.
I think perhaps you can clear this up. When you talk about osteoporosis and all that, it's like when a person turns past 40,
Yeah.
it's not a case of like, oh, it's too late now for me to go and strengthen my bones because osteoporosis is either starting to set in or it's just around the corner.
Mm.
Um, so no gym for me, I guess. It's not too late for them, right? They can still go
Never.
in, they can still
Yeah.
strengthen it even after 40 and onwards.
100%. Never, never.
Mm.
Yeah. It's never too late. We've had people come in where they are so old and frail and fragile at like what, 80. And you just so the cool part about resistance training is that it is for everybody. Like literally it's for everybody can do resistance training. Why? Because resistance is relative to your current levels. So obviously, like for myself who has been training for a long time, let's say I can lift a certain amount of weight in this particular lift. Like somebody that's just starting out, they're not going to lift what I lift,
Yeah.
they're going to lift relative to whatever they can do. And so for somebody that's really like, let's say they're really diagnosed with osteoporosis, they say, oh, right now your bones are quite brittle and all of that, right? You need to strengthen it up. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is just sit there and shrivel away. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, right? So you still have to strengthen it up. It's just that how do you do so? You won't really need like massive weights. You could even really start with just like squats, just like standing up, sitting down, right? And then you grab like a heavy bag of groceries. You could easily do that like up and down, and those things
Mm.
will stress the body enough. At that state, at that starting point, it will be enough for you to already get some effect. Of course, if you do it consistently and you're very diligent with it, then the good part is that you adapt really quickly, you feel better, and then you can actually graduate to using more and more intense weights.
And for
Yeah.
those that are listening to this and thinking like, hey, that sounds like me, but I have no idea where to start, we do have a coaching program on our website, 40plusfit.com, that you can sign up for. You can, a no obligation, free obligation consultation call with Twain himself, where you can see if he can actually be the person to help you through this. Right. So you did touch on another point there, and I think this is also very important to speak about, and that's the concept of nutrition. We have the exercise, and you're working out like crazy in the gym and everything, but actually, if you're not fueling your body for that exercise, you're also detrimental, shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because it's also my understanding that as we age, our body also doesn't absorb protein as well as what it did when we were back in our younger days. And so for that is oftentimes what people subscribe is that you actually increase the amount of protein that you should be taking in for a number of reasons, not just because of the way that it absorbs. There's other things that also come into play, which is contrary to how I also thought of things again 3 to 5 years ago, where I said it's like as you age, maybe your organs, everything not working as well. So you actually lower the amount of protein. So there's no stress on your kidneys and all these kind of things. That was how
Mm.
my understanding of it then.
Yeah.
I've sort of 180'd on that
Yeah.
after reading quite a bit of science. But perhaps you can give us some thoughts on that. Like when we talk about what are the things we need to look at diet wise
Yeah.
or nutrition wise in order to maintain muscle? Should we be increasing our protein? What do we do with our carbohydrates? What do we do with our fats? What about water? Or should we also consider supplementation?
Okay. Yeah. I think for the nutrition perspective, it's not so much that your body cannot absorb protein. I mean, like digestive mechanisms and absorption honestly irrespective of age. Um, but it's not a protein absorption issue per se. It's more of are you eating enough to support recovery? Yeah. The other part you mentioned was the fueling of the exercise that you're doing. If you're just doing weights, to be honest, you don't really need very much fuel. In fact, a lot of it honestly seems to be more in people's head than anything. It's like if you feel hungry, do you like perceive that as being low energy, and you go and try to do a workout and oh, I can't do a workout because I don't have any food. Um, that seems to be more of a placebo thing, seems to be a bit more randomized to the individual. But that being said, in terms of nutrition, it's not so much about fueling for the workout. It's about after you have worked out hard, what are you eating to support your body's recovery and growth and repair? And as I mentioned right at the start, what is aging? Aging is when your body cannot repair and cannot repair itself at a rate faster than or matching the rate faster than it's being broken down. And in order to be able to repair itself, it needs enough resources. And one of the building blocks of every single cell in the body is protein. That's why protein is always emphasized whenever you talk to any fitness professional. Tell you, hey, you got to get enough protein in. Now, there's some literature that comes out and says, hey, you don't need to get a ton of protein. And I think that's quite good for general like population stuff. Meaning, at the top end, you probably would go with, let's say, 1 gram per pound of body weight or 2.2 grams per kilo, right? Depending which part of the world you're listening to this from. What's the term, right? Freedom units or imperial units, right?
It's
No,
it,
sorry,
it, it
imperial units are metric, right? So freedom units.
it's proper measurement and then the other measurements.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave you guys up to decide which one's which. But yeah, so that's like the top end recommended range, okay? But there's also some interesting research that's coming out, and again, because this is not a very well studied field where they focus on protein overfeeding, and there was one metabolic ward study, very recent one, where they overfed people in a metabolic ward, which means that everything's controlled. So it's not self-reported. It's not people going home and eating whatever they eat and then come back and say, okay, this is what I ate. It's where they provide all the meals, everything's controlled, and they give it to the participants. And they found that those people that overate their calories from protein ended up end up gaining some weight, but they actually also gained more muscle. But this is just one paper. This is just one paper only, but it's a very promising paper. Yeah. And this actually lines up very well with what I've observed in my coaching experience, anecdotal coaching experience with especially with the older folks. When we really push up the protein levels just a little bit above what is the recommended high end, they end up getting a lot leaner while still maintaining a very, very good level of body composition. So when we check their body composition and see the body fat percentages, we see the body fat drop, but we also see that the lean body mass stays pretty much the same. So I think it's one of those things where honestly, I think protein is because it's such a fundamental building block, you really can't have too much of it per se. Because most people don't naturally eat a lot of protein anyway. The people that do are all of us gym bros that have been brainwashed since young, right? To get as much protein in as possible. But for the average person, most people don't naturally even like to eat protein. Yeah. Most people like their carbs and fats combined together. So protein's really important. Make sure you get in that. As you age, you probably want to get in even more. In terms of total calories, you probably don't want to eat much more than a very small calorie surplus. Okay, so what does that mean? It just means, let's say if whatever amount of calories you're eating right now and your weight's not going down or going up, then that's what your general maintenance calories would be. So let's say if you track and you say I'm eating about 2,000 calories a day and your weight's not shifting and moving, cool, that's roughly where your current maintenance is going to be. From there, you just want to bump it up by maybe an extra 100 or 200 calories and then keep it around there if you're trying to build some muscle, especially as you get older, because this should be a gentle enough surplus that your body will be well fueled and well resourced to be able to build muscle. Okay, it's a good environment for you to build muscle, but it's also not so much of an excessive surplus that you're going to put on a lot of fat. Okay, and as we get older, the last thing we want to do is put on too much fat. because while you can lose fat relatively easily, it's probably better not to have to go through the unnecessary process. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we're younger, it's much easier. Like we can definitely lose fat quite quick because dropping fat, it requires you to put your body in a fairly stressful state to do so because essentially you're starving yourself, right? Um, but as we get older, because recovery is always going to be a bit more of an issue, we need to be a bit more mindful of the recovery resources that we have. We don't really want to be trying to diet down, too aggressively or for too long. You want to always stay around that maintenance to just a slight surplus to always be making sure you're maintaining your muscle or building even more muscle. Yeah, because the natural ravages of time and age are going to make it difficult for you to gain muscle anyway. Okay, so so for those of you who are worried about getting too big, if you legitimately get too big, just like you're one of those kinds of people that we all hate, who looks at the weight and you grow and your biceps grow by 2 inches just because you looked at the weight, then this is not for you, obviously. But if you're like all of us normal people who struggle and strive and we are doing our best just to gain that half an inch on the biceps, right? Or even a quarter of an inch on the biceps, an eighth of an inch on the biceps, then yeah, this is definitely for you. So you always want to train as though you're trying to get as bulky as possible because the reality is you're not going to. For
I think
99% of people, yeah.
for myself is like the biceps are okay. It's the calves. I can
Oh, yeah.
work out till I'm like half dead, everything, and they just don't want to respond.
I feel you, brother. I feel you. I even have
Uh,
a shirt that says Team No Calves. Uh,
yeah. Okay.
but yeah,
Hydration, supplementation, anything you?
I think supplementation, probably go back and check out our supplementation episodes. I don't really want to drag this on too long. But hydration levels, I think I mentioned this one before as well. Most people are not hydrating enough, okay? And I think hydration, there's two things you need to know about hydration, right? First thing is, actually, no, there's a few more than two things, but let me just go through them quickly. First thing is that most people are drinking enough water to survive, okay? But just because you're drinking enough water to survive, it doesn't mean that your body is in an optimal state to help you with the muscle gain or fat loss process. Okay. And usually you won't feel very good also. So my first step with a lot of people is to ensure that they increase their water intake because most people only drink like maybe 1 liter of water a day or 1.5 liters of water a day. You're probably getting a lot of other liquids from other sources as well, which will add up. But what we're looking for is more optimal hydration. You want your body to be like saturated with a bit more water. The main reason why is because then your water balance is going to be more stable. You're not going to retain as much water in that case. And your cells, don't forget, water is a transport medium, right? For all the nutrients and all to kind of flow through. So if you don't have enough water hydrating up your cells, it cannot help you shuttle those nutrients in as well. So that's very important to make sure you bring up that water level. So for average person, the recommendation is about 40 meals per kilo. Okay, 40 meals per kilo. There's an imperial unit conversion as well, but we're not going to even get into that. But um, yeah, so 40 meals per kilo. Honestly, for most people, if you just want a blanket recommendation, hey, anywhere between 2 to 3 liters of water a day is probably good. So we don't count coffee, we don't count any other dehydrating, diuretic kind of types of drinks. Even calorieless drinks, so no. Maybe a light tea because that's pretty much water with flavored water, I guess, with some tea leaves. That's probably fine. But if it's a really strong tea, like those black teas, they don't know, Ceylon
Diuretic.
teas, whatever it is, then that wouldn't count as well. Okay, so just make sure you get about 2 to 3 liters of water a day, and you are probably going to hydrate yourself really well. Aside from that, also, just making sure that you
Mine is
have enough.
four liters a day. Going by your metric, mine is 4 liters a day.
Oh, for you, yeah. But I say for the average person, 2 to 3 liters probably because you have to go from where you currently are. So for most
Mm.
people, like I
Mine,
said, most
mine is
people.
coming from like a wow, okay, I've been also under drinking if it's 4 liters a day, because I usually
Oh, no,
average
no.
probably about three.
Yeah, yeah. So if you've already been drinking like about 3 liters a day and you use the formula that I mentioned,
Mm.
and then yours is 4 liters, then yeah, probably you should try to bring it up to 4 liters. But if you have only been drinking 1.5 liters, but you use the formula and you're at 4 liters, just go to 2. Just go to 2.5 first, and then try it out and see how much better you feel. Because most people will feel a lot better just from that smaller increase. Yeah, the formula is just a guideline, but also start from where you're at. Um, yeah, and then the other thing I was saying just now was you also want to make sure, aside from just drinking enough water, that your food has enough sodium in it. I think for most people, if you're eating out a decent amount, you probably don't have to worry about this. Okay. If you do a lot of your own meal prep, or if you're intentionally avoiding a lot of sodium, but you're also trying to be really, really active and you're exercising a lot, you're doing a lot of cardio, you're sweating a lot, you're training hard with weights, then these are the type of people that I will always recommend add a little bit more salt back into your food. If you don't have enough sodium, your water's not going to go into the cells. So you can be drinking a ton of water, but you can still end up dehydrated. You're just going to like pass out all the excess, and you're going to end up way more dehydrated than previously. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. I think most of you who are eating out, you're going to like a hawker center or you're eating out like at a Taco Bell or some other fast food joint. Yeah, you probably don't have to worry about that. Okay. If you've been intentionally trying to reduce your sodium and all that, if that's under the advice of your doctor and you have a heart condition, high blood pressure and stuff, yes, definitely do try to reduce that as well. But other than that, I would say for most cases, just take note of that. If you have been actively trying to reduce your sodium and you don't really need to, probably add some back in as you increase the water. Yeah.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
So that's covering the exercise, covering the nutrition. Is there
Yep.
anything else you would want to cover here, or do you think that pretty much
No,
covers everything?
I think that's pretty much the two key things for muscle retention or muscle support, muscle gain support. Probably the last thing that's not like exercise or nutrition would just be the other recovery factors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, for sure. And that's honestly the sleep sleep part of things. But this is also kind of tricky with older folks because I notice for a lot of older folks, they often feel like they don't need a
Hmm.
lot of sleep.
I wonder
Okay.
though, is it that they don't feel that they need longer sleep, or is it actually because I notice as well older people sleep earlier?
Yes. Yeah, I find that I think older people tend to sleep a little bit more in line with the regular body circadian rhythm. Like they
Hmm.
just sleep earlier and they wake up earlier. So if that happens to be you and you're sleeping like 6 hours, 7 hours, and you're actually feeling quite good, that's probably good enough. If you're talking about supporting muscle growth, I do think maybe a little bit more sleep can be that much more beneficial. But again, if you feel great, okay, and you're getting 6 to 7 hours, and you have a very regular rhythm where you're sleeping early, you're talking like 9, 10 p.m. kind of deal, you're honestly ticking those really big boxes already. I don't think you need to worry too much about that. A lot of times people try to zoom into the micro stuff, right? And they overly try to optimize that, and that ends up adding extra stress. So the net trade-off becomes that even though they potentially get a little bit of benefit from optimizing this thing, they get a much higher level of stress from it that negates any optimization there. So it's like one of those things, like I mentioned, if you are already in that rhythm of things with your sleep, hey, then that's good. Probably you don't need much more. In terms of supplementation, we talked about this before. Maybe some additional magnesium might be helpful as we get older, just for nervous system recovery. Otherwise, I don't think there's very much more you need to do there. Yeah, a lot of the rest of the stuff would that be, are you getting enough protein and are you training hard with weights and staying active? The other part also is actually the recharging component of things. So we always it's always rest and recharge, right? And the rest part is very simple, with like we talk about is the sleep part of things, but the recharging component is really about doing things that help you manage your stress and bring your stress down. And these are things that would be akin to hobbies, things that you just enjoy doing them because you enjoy doing them.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be like, oh, a side hustle, earning more money or whatever
Yep.
stuff, right? There's no additional stress to it. You just do it because it's something that brings you joy. Could be painting, could be drawing, could be sitting at the cafe. I have one client, she every Saturday while she brings the kids to their classes, she sits at the cafe while waiting for them to finish their classes and she sketches on her notepad, or a little sketchbook. She does this little drawings and stuff, and it brings us so much joy and peace, and And she's always so happy when she does that, you know, like we all need these little things that are ours to help recharge us. So I feel everybody should have those. Um, and then also,
Would K-dramas count?
um,
Asking for a friend?
well, tell your friend that unless he's doing that with, like, let's say connecting with somebody else while they're doing that, probably it's not a bad thing. I find that a lot of these things where you're like watching things or very consumptive kind of activities generally fall towards the side of the spectrum where it's not as recharging, or it doesn't like recharge you and make you as energetic as much as, let's say, if you were doing something that's a bit more active. Okay. And when I say active, it means like you are a bit more intentional about it, like you're drawing, you're reading, you're doing something. Yeah. So the thing that could make the difference for that is where you layer in that element of connection. So watching a show or a movie with somebody actually does help with the kind of recharging component of things, the regulation of things. I think in therapy that's called like co-regulation, whatever it is. But there is that element where if you're doing it with somebody else, then okay, then it becomes a thing that you're doing. Because usually after that, what happens is you start discussing the movie, you start talking about the thing. So it becomes an activity in and of itself that's a bit more productive. And I put that in inverted commas. Yeah. It's not that everything needs to be productive in a sense, but it's still active. You're doing something rather than just sitting there and just consuming, consuming, consuming. Because when you just sit and consume, without any active part on your end, it actually triggers different parts of the brain. Yeah, and so we need a little bit of that active component to things where we are doing, something a little bit more mindfully, while we are also consuming the thing that allows this synergy of that recharging, re-energizing feeling to come in to help with the stress management.
My daughter had that quite well done. We remember when we took her for her entrance exam for her school
Uh-huh.
that she's attending now. And so they brought out, well, I don't even remember, like 40 different questions that she had to go and she had to work out all the various different subjects and everything. And keep in
Uh-huh.
mind, she was like 5 at the time, right?
Okay.
So she comes and she's answering all these questions and da 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 da. And it gets to the end and she hands in the paper and she looks at this invigilator or this whatever the person is that's actually facilitating the test. And she asks him, "Is like, do you mind if I can color now?" So the guy's like, "Huh? Color what?" And he's like, I need to color." So he actually gave her a piece of like an image there that she could go and she started coloring. So he came out because we were sitting outside waiting. He's
Yeah.
like, "Okay, he just wants to let us know, your daughter's finished with the test, but she needs to color now." And he's like confused. And so we looked at him like, yeah, that's how she de-stresses. So obviously she found the test a bit stressful.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Like kids, that's the thing about kids, right? They go with no preconceived notions and they're so honest and raw about these things. I
Yeah.
just love that.
But
Love
I
the
just want
part.
to ask one more thing, and we can probably end with this one, is that earlier we spoke about the frequency of workouts, right?
Yes.
And so you suggested is like for most people, what would work is 3 hours in the gym. Three times in the gym per week.
Yeah. Like
Um,
active, intense, lifting some heavy weights, kind of stuff.
yeah.
Really pushing. Yeah.
So what happens is generally when we get told that, right? Then we're like either jump onto Google or we'll listen to our friends or whatever, and they
Yeah.
will tell us, okay, you cannot only do 3 workouts per week. What you also need to do is you need to supplement with a cardio aspect, or you need to this. So on the off days, maybe you should go running, or you should go swimming, or you should go and whatever else. All right.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking here about having this rest component in order to maximize the muscle building or the increase of muscle mass, how does that play a part now when we come and we talk about cardio? Is there anything else that we should shift our mindset with regards to how we do cardio on the off days? Or,
Um, I think previously I would have recommended that, you probably don't want to do like too intense cardio or anything, and just clock your steps. But I would say that that's more of a conservative recommendation. And I do think that for most people, you probably want to maybe add in a little bit more of an intense cardio on the off days. So if you're doing this those 3 times a week, the 30 minutes, just the rest of the week, because it's not a lot of training in and of itself. So your body could use a bit more. And training the cardiorespiratory system is actually really important as well, especially as we get older, right? Because you don't just want to be strong, you also want to be strong and able to have a work capacity to do things.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just be strong and then come out a flight of stairs and be like, oh my God, I'm getting out, right? Like there's no way there's no quality of life. So I would say, yeah, add in some cardio, like if you like to run, go and run. If you like to just go to the gym and use the cardio machines, there's so many various machines, the rowing machine, the elliptical, cycling, whatever it is, right? Anything that you can push at a reasonable level of effort. Don't have to push yourself until you're dying, but just push yourself where you're putting in the effort, you're sweating nicely, your heart rate's up slightly, and then that's good. There's no real target heart range you really need to aim for as well. We use this system with a lot of the clients where we just focus a lot more on what we call the RPE, the perceived exertion of the activity. And so I always tell them, for cardio, this is where I want you to generally work at. Upon a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is like you are going all out 100%, balls to the wall kind of thing, where you're really pushing yourself, running, sprinting full speed, whatever it is, that kind of level. And then 1 is you're just completely sedentary. You want to be at that level where it's a 6, maybe a 7. So it's enough of an effort where you actually have to be mindful about pushing yourself. But let's say if you are doing it with a buddy, like you and I were to go out and jog, we can still have a fragmented conversation and a chat while we're doing so. That's the kind of level you want to be pushing at. So it's just hard enough. You're going to get some good benefits, but it's not super, super, super hard that you're going to struggle to recover from it.
Okay.
So that's
But
a good starting point. Yeah, start from there. And then from there, you can decide, hey, are there some days where I can push myself harder than that? And then correspondingly, are there some days where I need to take it back a little bit?
okay. What if on the off days I go and I play futsal or I play badminton or tennis? Is
Mm.
that good enough or not?
Yeah, I
What are
would
its
I would
choice?
say that actually kind of qualifies almost commensurately, or even slightly more, depending on how intense you play the game. I mean, like
Mm.
if you play with your buddies and everybody's like really fit and it's a very intense game, then yeah, that's probably going to qualify as a much more active cardio. I have some clients who like they do BJJ and stuff, and obviously that's going to be intense because they're rolling and they're doing
Yep.
sparring and stuff, and that's really intense. But then I have some other clients that are like, I go cycling with the family. I'm like, okay, cool. Cycling with the family is not exactly the most intense cardio, so there's some context there that needs to be had. But the main thing is this, I think my big message here is with regards to cardio, previously where we would have told clients to like, hey, be a bit more conservative with it. I would say right now I've shifted my stance slightly to being more, hey, just go off, just have fun, just push yourself a bit. And if it's too much, you can always rest. Because cardio is one of those things where even if you push yourself a bit hard, you can recover relatively easily from it, and you will at least have the experience to know like, okay, that's a bit too hard. The next time I do it again, I can pull it back a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
you're gonna get good effects anyway. So the body is pretty resilient. You try all these things that we say, but then most importantly, it's just like after the first week, give it a week at least, right? Your first week is always going to be tough because it's doing something that you've never done before. So it will feel disproportionately intense. You're going to maybe feel disproportionately sore or disproportionately tired. Just kind of, you know, um, the what's the best way to say it? Like just kind of bear with it for that first week, just make
Mm.
it through this growing pains. Growing pains is part of the process. It's not something that you want to avoid. So make it through the first week, and then after that, when you do the second week and you try it again, you probably will start to notice, hey, even though I'm doing the same as last week, I suddenly feel like it's so much easier.
Yes.
That's exactly what all the clients tell us, especially after that first week. They're always like, oh, you know what? I'm not as sore as I was the previous week. Previous week, I could barely walk after just doing like a couple leg extensions and squats. It's not even like training super hard, just doing a couple leg extensions and squats. Oh man, my quads, my glutes, everything was so sore. And then the next week, they're just like, hey, you know what? I don't get the same soreness. And I did more than the previous week. You're like, yeah, cool. Your body's acclimatized already.
Yeah, I've just experienced that with some ladies that I was training. They came the second week and they said, ah, they don't think they're doing things right because they don't have the same feeling that they had in the first time when they came. I was like, no, that means that we are doing things right. If
Yes,
you still
exactly.
had the same feelings that you had last week, then we would have to readjust.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Okay, wonderful. So I think we'll call it there. Just remember that when we talk about these kind of things here, it's never too late to start building or maintaining muscle mass.
Yeah.
That is
It's never.
the one of the key takeaways. I hope that anybody listening to this and made it this far in the podcast will take away that it's never too late to start building or maintaining muscle mass. So if you want to take the step towards a stronger, healthier you can always visit 40plusfit.com, and you can sign up for a free, no obligation consultation call. We'll probably get to speak to Twain himself, the man, and can discuss and see if there's any way that the two of you can work together going forward. Other than that, we thank you for joining us for this podcast today. If you again, if you made it this far, we thank you even more. But don't forget to subscribe for this podcast and also share with your friends.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
And then, so until next time, we say what you say, stay fit, stay strong, and we'll see you then.